Hi folks, welcome to this video on varying the strength of a muscular contraction. What I would say is this video includes all on non-loss, spatial summation, wave summation, those topics. So what we're talking about here is how can we vary the strength of a muscular contraction. We're also going to look at the structure and function of a motor unit. Quite a rare question, but it comes up nonetheless. Basically, if you're ever asked what is a motor unit, okay, let's get it down here now and let's have a little picture of it. A motor unit is made up of four things. A cell body. This cell is in the central nervous system. Okay, we've got a neuron, posh name for a nerve. These tiny little fellas, or ladies, called motor end plates. And what you've got here, believe it or not, you know my videos now, the diagrams are appalling, as well as my handwriting. We've got muscle fibres. Okay, what are we basically trying to show by this? Okay, an impulse is generated in that cell body. Let's say we want to contract these muscle fibres. An impulse is generated. The impulse travels down the neuron, the nerve, reaches the motor end plates, and that's then what causes a contraction in the muscles. If you want to link it to Huxley's sliding filament theory, when the impulse reaches the motor end plates, you get release of acetylcholine, all different types of neurotransmitters, but ultimately it leads to a release of calcium ions, which then, as you know, starts the process of Huxley's sliding filament theory. So that's basically a cell body, and we've got a motor unit there. Right, here's the thing. This motor unit that we're looking at, with its four parts, could have, potentially, it's got one cell body. Each motor unit has one cell body, one neuron, but there could be 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 muscle fibres attached to that one neuron. Okay, and that's important for us to know in terms of the title of this video, how do we vary the strength of a contraction? One way that we can vary the strength of a contraction is by recruiting larger motor units for strong contractions or smaller motor units for weaker contractions. What do I mean by that? Well, look, if this motor unit, this one that I've drawn here so expertly, has got 1,000 muscle fibres or 10,000 muscle fibres attached to it, that is a large motor unit. So if I recruit that one, by sending one impulse, I can switch on 1,000 or 10,000 muscle fibres. That's going to produce a small contraction. But let's say this motor unit only has 10 or 100 muscle fibres attached to it. If I send an impulse down that, I will only contract 10 or 100 muscle fibres. So that would be a weaker contraction because that is a smaller motor unit. So that's one way I can vary the strength of a muscular contraction. Okay, what's another way? I can send impulses from cell bodies down motor neurons to muscle fibres that are fast twitch fibres if I want a strong contraction, or slow twitch fibres for a weaker contraction. What do we know about muscle fibre types and things like that? Fast twitch fibres are twice as thick as slow twitch fibres. If they're twice as thick, they will produce more force when they contract. So if I recruit a motor unit which has fast twitch fibres at the end of it, these muscle fibres are fast twitch, that will allow me to produce a stronger contraction. If I send an impulse down a motor unit, down a motor neuron that I know has slow twitch muscle fibres attached to it, I will produce a weaker contraction. You might be going, how do I know? Your brain knows. It's what you've been programmed to do all your life. Okay, when you were doing your first movements as a child, learning to pick things up and put things down, placing them delicately or placing them with force, you were learning which muscle fibre to contract, fast or slow twitch. So there are two ways I can vary the strength of a contraction. Right, here's a slightly better diagram of the compared to the crude one I drew earlier on the previous slide. Sorry, what you've got here, these little blobs here, these are your cell bodies in your central nervous system, in this case in the spinal cord. As you can see, what we've got is we've got two motor units here. We've got a blue one and a red one. So there's the cell body. The blue dot is the cell body of the blue motor neuron and unit. Sorry. There's the blue neuron, and as you can see, it's attached to the blue muscle fibres via blue motor end plates. Okay. We've also got a second motor unit. This time a red one. There's the cell body. Here's the neuron, and this one is attached to the red muscle fibres via red motor end plates. The motor end plates are also called the neuromuscular junction, where the nerve, the neuro, reaches the muscles, okay, where two things meet, that is a junction, okay. What is this an example of? Well, what we're going to link it to here is the all or none law, the all or none principle, the all or none law. It states something that you might think, well, that's a bit obvious, but it needs to be stated, okay? There's the all or none law, the all or none principle at the bottom. If an impulse is sent down a neuron, all the muscle fibres will contract. If no impulse is sent down the neuron, no muscle fibres will contract. So the point I'm trying to make is this. If we look at motor neuron 1 here, the blue one, if that cell body produces an impulse, the impulse will travel down the blue neuron, down all branches of it, and all of the blue muscle fibres will contract. Not half, not one, not three, all four of them in this instance. Same with the red one. If an impulse is sent from the cell body down the red neuron, it will branch off and all the red muscle fibres will contract. If no impulse is sent down, none of them will contract. So the point is, all the muscle fibres attached to that neuron, whichever neuron it is, will either all contract or all relax, depending on whether an impulse is going down them or not. So, how can we vary the strength of a contraction according to the all or none law or the all or none principle? Well, if I want a strong contraction, I need to send impulses down more motor units, more motor neurons. If I want a weaker contraction, I'm going to send impulses down fewer motor units or motor neurons. Just look at the above example again. There's three options here. I want the muscle to fully relax and produce no force at all, in which case I won't send an impulse down either motor neuron and none of the muscle fibres will contract. Let's say I want a 50% strength contraction. Well, what I will do there is I will send an impulse down one of these motor neurons but not the other. I can't send an impulse down both and only have half of the fibres switch on. If an impulse goes down both, all of the fibres are going to contract. So I've just got to send an impulse down one motor unit or one motor neuron to recruit half the fibres. If I want a 100% maximum contraction, I'm going to send an impulse down both motor units and all of the muscle fibres will contract. Okay, so that is the all or none law and how we can vary the strength of a contraction according to it. So there's one other thing we can affect to change the strength of a contraction, okay, and that is the frequency at which we send impulses, okay. So we're talking about, sending impulses down motor units and different motor units and larger and smaller motor units and motor units with fast twitch fibres and slow twitch fibres and the number of motor units we're recruiting. But also, what about the frequency at which we're sending impulses? How can that affect the strength of a contraction? Well, it can affect it in two ways. We've got what's called spatial and wave summation. Let's have a quick look at wave summation first. That's the simplest of the two. Okay, an impulse, also known as a twitch, looks like that. Okay, if I send an impulse or a twitch down a motor unit, down a motor neuron, the muscle fibres will contract and relax. Okay, so what is wave summation? In order to build a strong contraction, I can send wave after wave of impulses to build a big contraction. So what I do is, I send an impulse, and before it has time to totally die off, I send another one. And before that has time to die off, I send another one, and then another one. And as you can see, what I've done is I've built a nice, big, strong contraction. Okay? So wave summation, what can I do? As it says there, I can send fast and frequent impulses for strong contractions, like I've done here, fast and frequent, or I simply send lower and less frequent impulses for weaker contractions. What you'd end up is with something that looks like that. If I send them slower and less frequent, I'm going to end up with a weaker contraction. So that's another way that I can vary the strength of a contraction, by the rate at which I send the impulses, and we call that wave summation. So finally then, what is spatial summation? Well, the word spatial obviously means to space out. Now what I've got here is I've got a very crude graph with 3 motor units on them. Motor unit 1, motor unit 2, motor unit 3. So each of these is a separate cell body with a separate neuron and its own, let's say, 1,000 muscle fibres attached to it. So each of these motor units is a different cell body, a different neuron, and a different 1,000 muscle fibres. What I can do is, I can send an impulse down this one, here, and then here. What I can then do is, send an impulse down this one, here. And what I could then do is send one down this motor unit 3 a little bit earlier there, and then another one there, okay? What we end up with, when we add all these three together, is a relatively sustained contraction. But what we've done is, we've shared the workload out across different motor units, okay? So what is the benefit of that? Well, spatial summation allows impulses to be sent down different motor units at different times, so we rotate the impulses, and this shares the workload out across the entire muscle and reduces fatigue. Remember, this motor unit and this one are all part of the same muscle. It could be a quadricep, a hamstring, a bicep, something like that, but they're each in charge, or they've each got under their control a different 1,000 muscle fibres. Okay, you know, different to each other. So by sending impulses down at different times, we share the workload out. The alternative is to just send impulses down the same motor unit over and over again, and they get fatigued and they get tired and they can't maintain that contraction for long. You can maintain contractions for longer by rotating the frequencies across, and that allows us to build stronger contractions over longer periods of time. Okay? Hope this video has been useful, folks. They're the key ways in which we can vary the strength of a contraction. Good luck with it.